Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu and I'm back with another Digimon deck profile video. So today I'm going to be continuing to update some decks from the previous meta, and with the new cards breathing some new life into them, they definitely can still perform relatively well in the BT04 meta. So the deck that I'm going to be updating today is going to be the double Omnimon deck for BT04, and BT04 definitely gave us a lot of new tempo tools, and the way that Omnimon really like to be played is you just utilize a lot of those tempo tools to try to get into Omnimon as fast as you possibly can and win off of him. And now that we have some more tempo tools to be playing around with, he can move even faster than he could before. So going over the deck, starting with the Digitama, I'm going to be running one copy of Gigimon. So Gigimon is still a really good Digitama for the deck just because he has this nice inheritable ability where during your turn, while the opponent has 5 or more cards in their trash, this Digimon gains plus 1000 DP. So this is just a way of DP boosting our Digimon so that way they could be as powerful as they possibly can while still trying to be as tempo efficient as we possibly can. But the main Digitama of the deck, I'm actually swapping over to Koromon, just because it really doesn't matter which one is the main and which one is the sub, because they're both doing almost very similar things. It's just for what the deck is trying to do as of right now, just because we have more tempo tools to try to get up into our higher stages that much faster, I feel like Koromon's buff is a little bit easier to obtain than Gigimon's. Just because Koromon's condition for gaining the plus 1000 is the Digimon needs to have 4 or more Digivolution sources in them. So I felt like because we're utilizing all of these tempo tools, we could easily get up to 4 and utilize his buff a little bit more meaningfully than Gigimon's. But again, like I said, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter which Digitama you use, as long as you're just using a Digitama. Next, on to the rookies, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Monodramon. So the deck's name is Tempo and Efficiency. So we're just going to be running a whole bunch of Tempo and Efficiency cards. So Monodramon, being a 2-drop 0 to Evo 3k DP Digimon, is just really good for rookie stats, and as such, that's why we're playing him. Next, I'm going to be running 3 copies of Biyomon. So this Biyomon is one of our more aggressive tools in the deck just because we want to utilize its on-delete ability to gain a memory during our turn. So in order to easily trigger this ability off, we generally want to use this card to swing into the opponent's security, so that way we have a high chance of it dying to the security, and then we'll be able to gain the memory, thus being able to extend and enhance some of our plays. Next, I'm going to be running 3 copies of Biyomon. So this Biyomon is from the starter deck, and it's basically in the deck just to kind of extend the same exact stat lines as Monodramon, so that way we could try to be as efficient as we possibly can be. And then the last rookie of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Agumon. So this is the Agumon from the starter deck, and this Agumon is still a really good card to be thinking about playing, just because he has a very nice generic inheritable ability of during your turn, this Digimon gains plus 1000 DP, so he's just another way to DP boost our Digimon. Next, on to the champions, I'm going to be running 4 copies of DarkTyrannomon. So DarkTyrannomon is another efficiency card just because he has this really low Evo cost, so 9 out of 10 times what we're going to be doing with the card is just using him as a stepping stone to Digivolve up into him for 1, and then Digivolve up past him into our higher stages, and he's definitely a really good card for doing that. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Fugamon. So Fugamon is one of the new cards that's coming out with BT04, and Fugamon is definitely a really good card because he has a really low play cost and he has a really low Evo cost. We don't care about his DP because most of the time we just want to hard play him just to get a level 4 out as efficiently as we possibly can, because 3 for a level 4 is on the lower side, and on top of which he also evos for 1. So like I said, the whole idea is get this card out as fast as we possibly can, and then just use him as a good stepping stone to get into our higher stages, so that way we're never aggressing with the card, so his DP doesn't matter. And then the last champion of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Koromon. So Koromon is just still the deck's dedicated blocker, and he's still a relatively decent blocker just because he hard plays for 5, evos for 2, and has 6000 DP. So this could wall out a lot of the lower level Digimon in the game, and because he has a okay play cost, we don't necessarily feel as bad to hard play him if we're caught in that situation where we have to. Next, on to the Ultimates, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Groundramon because Tempo and Efficiency is the name of the game. So what this card is doing as far as tempo and efficiency is he is a level 5 that has a really low play cost of 5, and he also has a really low evo cost of 2, just making him one of the best cards we could possibly play for tempo and efficiency. Next up, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Lavogaritamon. So Lavogaritamon is another really good card just because it's very tempo efficient. So what's making this card tempo efficient is the fact that it has just a really low evo cost. So it's acting very similar to DarkTyrannomon, except on a level 5, and we could use this if we really wanted to start trying to aggress if we need to, or we just are trying to mainly use it for the evo cost of 2, so that way we could get into our megas as quickly as we possibly can. And then the last ultimate of the deck is going to be 1 copy of Volcdramon. So Volcdramon is just a very fantastic card to be playing in this style of deck, just because he has this nice inheritable ability of giving whatever Digimon he's digivolving into security attack +1. So security attack +1 just allows us to do more damage, but again, I'm only running 1 copy of him just because I'd rather be more efficient to try to get into our higher stages that much faster than try to build a really good and powerful stack to try to do some really cute and cheeky things with. But because he does have a really powerful inheritable ability that we could take advantage of, I definitely still feel like he is very important for the deck in the off chance that we actually utilize him. Next, on to the Megas, I'm going to be running 3 copies of Spinomon. So Spinomon is really only in the deck just because, again, tempo and efficiency. He has a relatively low play cost compared to a lot of other Megas, and on top of which he also has a really low evo cost compared to a lot of other Megas, so that just makes him one of the better Megas that we could play in terms of tempo and efficiency. So we could just Digivolve up into him and only pay 2, versus Digivolving up into him and paying anything more, so that way we could try to get into Omnimon that much more faster and efficiently with. Then, on top of which, he does have this really interesting ability where during your turn, this Digimon gets plus 3000 DP, so we don't necessarily care about the fact that he has 10,000, because during our turn, he's going to be swinging for at least 13, which could help clear some bodies if we need to attack into the opponent's Digimon, or if we want to try to attack into the opponent's security check, then he's going to have a slightly higher chance of living, just because he's going to boost his own DP on top of whatever other boosts that we have for him. Next, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Victorygreymon. So Victorygreymon is a really good card to be utilizing just because he has this really nice when Digivolving ability of Digiburst 2, where we get to delete one of the opponent's Digimon with 8000 DP or less. So he's just acting as the Mega Removal card, where we just want to Digivolve up into him, and then hopefully the opponent is caught with a level 5 on the field, so that way Victorygreymon can then delete that level 5, and then we go into Omnimon the following turn, or if they give us enough memory, then we could go into him right after to try to delete something else. So Victorygreymon is just a really fantastic card for this removal ability, on top of which his stats aren't necessarily too bad. The only downside to the card is he evos for 4, but because we are so tempo efficient everywhere else, we don't necessarily feel that bad that he evos for 4. Next, I'm going to be running 3 copies of Phoenixmon. So Phoenixmon is basically doing almost the exact same thing that Spinomon is doing, where it has a low play cost if we ever get caught in the off chance that we need to hard play it, on top of which it has a low evo cost, which we're going to be utilizing most of the time, just because it's very efficient to just evo for 2 versus evo for 3 or 4. And on top of which, he just naturally has that larger DP, so we could even use him as an aggressive tool if we really feel like we need to. But again, the name of the game and the deck is just tempo and efficiency, and this is just another fantastic tempo card to try to get into Omnimon as fast as we possibly can. Next, on to the level 7s, I'm going to be running 3 copies of Omnimon. So this is the Omnimon from BT01, and this Omnimon is still really, really good just because his 2 abilities are really, really powerful, and he has some really high DP to boot, making him just very hard to deal with overall. So what his first ability is doing, it's a when Digivolving ability, where you basically get to delete one of the opponent's Digimon, and all other Digimon that they control with the same name as the one you deleted. So this is just some really powerful removal, and if the opponent isn't careful about how they build their stacks or Digivolve or play their Digimon, then Omnimon could potentially delete multiple targets, and that could be really brutal and backbreaking for them. And then on top of which, he has a when attacking ability, where we get to unsuspend this Digimon by returning one of our level 6s from his inheritable source back into our hand. So this is just really powerful because a lot of our level 6s are just tempo efficient, and that way we could then replay him, on top of which he is multi-attacking, so that way he could deal multiple instances of damage in a single turn. So he's just looking to be an absolutely fantastic card still to be playing around with. And then the last level 7 and last mega of the deck is going to be 2 copies of Omnimon Alter S. So Omnimon Alter S is doing a very similar thing to what the original Omnimon is doing, where he has the exact same stat line and he has 2 really powerful abilities. His when Digivolving is another removal type of ability, except this time it is de-Digivolving 1 on all of the opponent's Digimon, and then if any of the opponent's Digimon has 5000 DP or less, then you get to delete all of those Digimon with 5000 DP or less. So this is basically acting as a more consistent board clear for a lot of the opponent's small things, so it's just a really good ability to have to try to control and mitigate the board, and on top of which he even has his own when attacking ability, where you get to return a level 6 Digivolution source back into your hand underneath this card to basically make him unblockable, so he could help close out the game if the opponent is trying to wall you out. So between both of these Omnimons, they're both very powerful tools and do lots of very strong things to try to control and manage the opponent's board, on top of having their own unique aggro tools to help them aggress and push for damage, or lethal. And then the last card of the deck is going to be the only option of the deck, and that's going to be 2 copies of Gaia Force. Now, I did think about playing 2 Tamers in the deck just to help the overall consistency, but I just like what Gaia Force is doing still, just because it's still a very powerful removal option, where it has the main ability of deleting one of the opponent's Digimon, and then it has the security ability of activating its main, so whether it's in your hand or in the security, it's always going to be able to delete one of the opponent's Digimon, and that could be really powerful and really devastating for the opponent, all depending on what the board state is currently looking like. And then as far as other cards that you could think about running, there's still just a ton of flexibility and diversity in which you could use to really make the deck your own. So like I said, the Digitama slot doesn't really matter that much, so you could think about utilizing something like a Sukudomon, so that way when you are in your Omnimon, then you will at least be able to gain 1 additional memory each time your Omnimon is going to be attacking, so that way you could even make your future plays that much more powerful when you have an Omnimon on the board and Sukudomon underneath them. Then you also could be thinking about running a little bit more of a Greymon base. So if you want to not super heavily rely on Omnimon as much, and you want to play a little bit more into the Greymon tribal, then you could think about utilizing this Agumon, just because this Agumon has a great inheritable ability, where during your turn, while this Digimon has a Greymon in its name, then this Digimon gets plus 2000 DP, so it'll make a lot of your other Digimon more powerful and more threatening as a whole, even though it's not directly going to be impacting Omnimon. Then you could also think about running the Greymon from the starter deck, because the Greymon from the starter deck is just doing the same thing as a Volcdramon, just 1 stage lower. So if you want to just double down on making sure that you can deal as much damage as you possibly can, playing more Volcdramon and playing Greymon definitely will help it increase the overall damage output and increase the overall consistency of that damage output, just because you're having multiple instances of the same ability, just on different levels. Then, if you wanted to, you could also think about running Skull Greymon. So Skull Greymon is a really fantastic Tech 1 of, just because he has this nice on-play ability, where we get to delete one of the opponent's Digimon with the blocker ability. So there are a decent amount of Digimon with blocker, and we definitely want to make sure we could get rid of them. So hard playing Skull Greymon to straight up delete a blocker can be very, very powerful and brutal, especially depending on the deck, and on top of which, after we delete the Digimon with blocker, we could then Digivolve up into our Megas the following turn to make some really powerful plays there. So Skull Greymon is just another fantastic card to think about. And then you could also think about playing Metal Greymon, the secret rare from BT01, just because if you actually do care about trying to DP boost your Digimon, then this Metal Greymon definitely has one of the best DP boosting inheritable abilities, so that way we can make our Megas even stronger than they were before. But if you want to go for some more spicy tech cards, you could also think about running the BT03 Metal Greymon, just because he has the piercing ability natively, so stacked with a couple of buffs, he could be a very devastating ultimate to be aggroing with, and on top of which he also has a nice when Digivolve ability of his own to return a level 7 Digimon with a virus in its attribute from your trash to your hand. So this is a really good card to want to bring out either Ragnalordmon if you're going to be splashing in some Ragnalordmon, or you could utilize this to just bring back Alter S to just get an extra Alter S to be playing around with. Or you could use some of their older tools just because the older tools still work just as fine as they did before. So you could still think about running Volcdramon just because Volcdramon's on-play ability to delete all of the opponent's Digimon with 4000 DP or less is still really strong. And if he stays on the board, then you could just go into Omnimon right after, and that's just very brutal and devastating on the opponent. On top of which, he also naturally has security attack +1, so he even can be used as a good aggro tool to just try to gain some additional security checks in. Then you could also think about utilizing Blitzgramon. So Blitzgramon is acting very similar to Victorygramon, except the big difference is Blitzgramon's when digivolving ability is de-digivolving. So it's not necessarily removing the Digimon off the field, which I definitely prefer removing the Digimon off the field, but it's definitely weakening their Digimon so that way they have to waste time and memory to just try to get back into the Digimon that they just lost, so that way their current Digimon can be as powerful as it possibly could be. Now, that's like both the upside and the downside because sometimes they might not be able to, and then de-digivolve is really good, but if they could build a better stack because you de-digivolve them, then that feels a little bit unfortunate, but that's kind of like the risk-reward of the de-digivolve mechanic as of right now. And on top of which, he also has the piercing ability, so he could even be his own aggro tool and deal lots of damage himself if you don't feel like you want to use him to go up into either of the Omnimons with. And then you could also run some Tamers in the deck, so if you want to stop at your level 6s and aggress with your level 6s more than your level 7s, then you could think about running Taikamiya just because we do have a lot of efficiency tools to just get into our megas very, very easily, and if we build a large enough stack, then Taikamiya can give them security attack +1, which will just help their overall damage output. So that's always just a nice thing to think about, and he is a memory fixing tamer, so if our memory is ever less than 3, then he'll always just hard set it to 3, thus making our plays that much easier to make, and we could do some very powerful and very devastating plays just because a lot of our deck is very memory efficient. Or if you want to double down on some more Greymon synergy and you don't feel like you want to run Tai, you could also think about running Marcus just because Marcus is also a memory fixing tamer, and on top of which he has a really good ability where during your turn, when one of your Digimon with Greymon in its name attacks, then you get to suspend this tamer to gain 1 memory, thus making it even more memory efficient than Tai because he could actually be gaining us some memory, but we do have to slightly change and alter the deck to incorporate the card because we would naturally want to run more Greymons than just Victory Greymon, so that way we could really take use and advantage of this ability. So, as I said before, there's just a lot of different things that you could do with the deck, and the deck is definitely looking like it has some very high synergy and lots of really good, strong, memory-efficient plays. So I think going from Egg to Mega, it only costs about 5 memory, which is really, really cheap compared to a lot of other decks, but we also have some really good and interesting synergies, just because Victory Greymon having this Digiburst ability requires us to get rid of our evolution sources, but we don't really feel bad about getting rid of our evolution sources, just because most of them aren't doing anything, because we're utilizing them for the fact that we just want to get up into our Megas as fast as we possibly can. So there's definitely a lot of interesting aspects on what's going on in the deck, and like I said, you could change the deck really to how you feel like you want to be playing. This is just my interpretation on what I feel like the deck wants to be doing in BT04. So that's all I really have for this video. As always, feel free to tell me your thoughts down in the comments below, and down in the description below are different ways that you could support me in the channel. So one of those ways is I do have a TCG Player affiliate link, so whenever you use that affiliate link to buy cards off of tcgplayer.com, then some of the money will go to supporting me in the channel, and on top of which I also do stream over on twitch.tv/Zenitsu, so following and subbing is a good way to support me over on that platform as well. And on top of that, I also do make and sell playmats over on Overcard Gamers on Facebook, so whenever you buy one of my designs through them, then some of that money will also help go to supporting me in the channel. And as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content, and I'll see you in the next video.